focus on physical activity, which is what Jane's assignment to me is, but I wanted to expand it a little bit to talk also about how we get people to think differently about physical activity, which seems to be the most elusive of many of the desires we have to keep our population young. So I'm going to show some images. I actually made some phone calls to friends who do a lot of work in this area. And this first image is from Daniel Amen, who's a good friend of mine. He's an expert really in brain imaging on the West Coast. And if you look at this, he shows brains from young people to older people. The far right here is a 70-year-old, and the far left is a 20-year-old. You'll notice a few things. First off, this is a scan looking at function of the brain. So you see there are lots of holes in the brains as you get older. This is because those brains aren't quite as functional in those areas. Little holes of functionality lead to a slowness in processing information, inability to recall details. It doesn't change wisdom, which is a very different phenomenon. It just affects the alacrity, the speed at which we process things. You also notice that the colors are a little different, also reflective of where we process information. But you know what? This is not necessarily what's going to happen in any of our lives. This is a construct that tends to represent the average experience for the average American. But we still see brains that look like 25-year-old brains in people who are in their 70s. And the real challenge today is to figure out how that happens. And physical activity ends up being a very important part of that. Because you can do all the crossword puzzles you want to make your brain smarter. It takes a lot more mental energy to move your limbs around and do things that take you to a different level, and that means physical activity. So this is how we talk about it on the show. I'm going to show you a short clip about how we try to motivate folks. Now to get started, I need a little bit of help from the audience. I need one of you to be my assistant of the day. So if you're sitting in seat 114, come up. I'm not sure it's going to work like that. Let's try it this way. There you go. There you go. Well, are you ready?
Yeah, I think so. All
right. What's your name?
My name is Yolanda.
Yolanda. All right. Yolanda, have you ever had a urinary tract infection?
I don't know.
You don't know? If I asked you
I don't remember.
At a calmer time, what would you have said?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Have you ever had burning down below? Have you ever had a feeling that you'd go to the bathroom, but nothing came out?
I don't think so.
Nothing think so?
Maybe years and years and years ago, not.
All right.
I don't remember.
So Yolanda, I'm going to show you, if you're willing to play with me, a little bit about infections.
Okay.
You on board?
I'm on board.
Okay,
oh
come.
My God, oh my God. I'm shaking.
All right.
Oh my God.
Now, you know, we like to start off with a little anatomy section. Okay. Are you up for it?
Okay.
Okay, look, the gloves match your nails. It's
yeah,
perfect.
My nails.
Oh.
Yeah, my shirt too.
Oh, it's perfect. Oh, it's perfect. Here.
Oh my God,
Here. One of the biggest challenges we have when we talk about health, and particularly talking about activities, people think they know it already. So one of the biggest challenges I have is to shake them up a little bit and have them think very differently about what their opportunities are. And the one thing I have learned for sure, and I think this messaging becomes important to think about how to take all the wonderful information that's going to come around on the stage today and try to translate it in a way that's accessible, is that people don't change what they do based on what they know. They change what they do based on how they feel. For example, this is an image of osteoporosis, something that we know starts in the 20s for a lot of women. And you know, when it progresses to a normal-looking bone, this beautiful, elegant, thick, structured bone, to the osteoporotic appearance on the right here that looks like it's been eaten by moths, right? Your first thought is, what medication do I take for that? Right? That's the first thought. Now, we all know that the single most important way to change that is physical activity, right? Resistance training. If you can lift things up, you prevent the bone from remodeling, because your bone remakes itself completely every 7 years. So it's not going to waste energy making cells and making strong bones and sinewy muscles if they're not being used. Why would your body do that? So it begins to purposely divert attention to the bone and focus it on other things like your belly fat. And that's what ends up happening too frequently, as we don't keep physically fit. Now, I have a good friend, Dan Buettner. He wrote a book called The Blue Zones. And Dan took me for an Oprah show years ago to different places. We went to Costa Rica. He had gone to Sardinia and Okinawa. And in this country, we went to Loma Linda, the place where we actually lived the longest in the United States. And when we looked at these different countries, the chance to live into age 100 was 4 times greater 4 times greater than if you live in America. So what's different? Well, they have different kinds of foods they eat. They're all wholesome foods, but different kinds of foods. You have lots of meat in Sardinia, you have plant-based in Costa Rica, etc. They have different kinds of social mores. In some countries, couples were a mandatory rule, and others that just wasn't what was going on. But one thing they all shared was daily, arduous physical activity. Rigorous activity, like picking up the bucket, climbing to the top of the hill, and climbing back down again with it full, is what was customarily done day in and day out. And we believe allowed them to avoid the frailty, which is the #1 cause of death in America. If I got rid of all the cancer in this country, got rid of it all, we would live on average about 2.8 years longer. That's it. 2.8 years. What kills us is we're so frail, when we get cancer, we can't weather the storm of treatment. Sometimes we get heart problems, which is the #1 cause of death. Can't go through the procedures. That's my specialty. We look at a person, we say, what's their protoplasm? What do they have in their soul, in their body that's left as a reserve to get them through a pretty traumatic operation so we can't impact on their aortic valve or coronary disease or whatever they may have inside of them. So that frailty issue is something I'm going to come back to over and over again because it's so fundamentally important to how we define longevity and the quality of life that we have, and impacting on events like Alzheimer's and other causes of dementia. Now, in my specialty of atherosclerosis, and this is an example of an aorta, the big tube coming down your back. This is the tube that tore in John Ritter, for example, caused him to die. But in most of us, it's pretty thick and gets thicker as we get older if we have hardening of the arteries. But I'm showing that for a reason. You notice this structure on the right, it's a kidney. It's normal. The kidney on the left is a lot smaller. You know why it's smaller? It's dead. That kidney died. The blood going to it is clotted off. The atherosclerosis, the hardening of the artery, the main aorta, when it was going to that kidney, was so thick that the blood couldn't get past it and it closed off. But let me bring this alive to you, if I can, with a movie. This is a movie about the major artery on the inside of your heart. It's called the Widowmaker artery, the LAD. So inside this artery, we know in young people, by the time you're 18, 20 years of age, you have a little yellowish plaque. That plaque grows in your 30s and your 40s and 50s. It starts to get larger, and it grows larger into your 50s. That plaque gets fragile, and sometimes it ruptures like that. It tears. Something happened. Now you have an open sore on the inside of your heart. That blood vessel now is going to try to form a scab on it, try to fix it any way it can. As that scab forms, it gets larger and bigger, and all of a sudden, kaboom! You just saw the leading cause of death in the Western world. And the question is, how do you avoid that? Now the good news, because that seems pretty scary, doesn't it? But the good news is that plaque ruptured and that clot formed in minutes, hours, and days, not months, years, and decades. So what it's really saying is you might have a plaque that started when you're 20 years of age, but by the time you're 60, if it's still there and progressing slowly, it could go to 150 years of age without being a problem. But if it ruptures and tears, that becomes an issue, which means what you had for lunch today and who you fight with tonight can influence your chance of having a heart attack tomorrow morning. It's that temporally connected. There are 5 factors that control 70% of how you age. 5 factors. Now, Jane mentioned that 2/3 of how we age we control. This is what specifically she's talking about. Number 1 issue is blood pressure. 115/75 is the optimal number you want to seek. You don't just want to avoid hypertension. Now, why is that important? Remember that artery I showed that ruptured and caused a heart attack when it closed off? Because that's what happens when that artery closes. If your blood pressure is high, it rips that artery wall. It causes a gap, that hole that I showed earlier, and that leads to big-time problems, like what we demonstrated. Number 2 is stress control. I'll come back to that because that's an important driver of blood pressure. Number 3, cigarettes and toxins. One word of advice, folks. I, as a heart surgeon, I have always told people who smoke that I will not operate on them. And I'm not doing it to be harsh. I'm doing it because I care about them. And I don't ever remind people who are smokers that they're smoking because they know it's not good for them. I tell them, listen, if you care about what's going on to the people around you, and if you realize how much they love you, all they're really asking you to do is to care about yourself as much as they care about you. And that will change the way you think about yourself and change the self-esteem issues that often drive those addictive behaviors. Number 4 is exercise. My topic today, 30 minutes a day, essential. And then if you look at this data, for example, Chris McDowell's data on the Tarahumara Indians in Mexico, when these folks go running, which they do a lot, they run short little steps, they run long distances, they do endurance exercises because our ancestors did endurance hunting. And by that I mean, we have the ability to sweat and we can breathe through our mouth while we do that. So our ancestors did not outrun the antelope. They were very deft in their ability to outlast the antelope. So we have to be able to do that exercise or we develop that frailty that I spoke of earlier. And your physical fitness, your peak physical fitness is age 27. But if we're talking about endurance, that's not how high you can jump. That's how long you can jump or run for. Age 17 is when you start to develop a pretty reasonable endurance level. Guess what? The next time you drop down to that level, you're 65. I'm going to say it again. Your endurance at 17 should be the same at 65. There is no reason why that is not the case, except that you limit yourself to think differently. Healthy diet that you love, and I'm not going to spend much time on that because it's not my topic, is another essential element. If you don't love it, you won't stay on it. So this is how we should exercise one big muscle, the diaphragm muscle. This is why breathing is so critical. When you inhale, your diaphragm comes down, your belly button goes out. As you exhale, belly button in, diaphragm, that big orange muscle goes up. That's a big difference. Most of you, when you take a deep breath, you go like this. What this animation is showing is that muscle, that diaphragm, can only be developed and strengthened if we learn deep belly breathing, which is, by the way, a wonderful way to deal with stress. Because deep belly breathing, which is a source of most mystic religions, the core of yoga, meditation, kids, when they're asleep as children, will naturally move their belly up when they inhale. You want this kind of behavior going on inside your body. And when you're in a meeting and the person's stressing you out, instead of reaching across and strangling, and you go, all right, JB, whatever you want. And they can't even tell the difference. Now, conventional diets don't work because the biology of blubber defeats them. There are a dozen redundant systems to hold you back. And I want to talk very quickly about the fact that I want you to look at your waist size. Your belly fat is what ultimately will drive most of the morbidity that we cause and see, and it's the thing that physical activity seems to hold the most. Your belly size, your waist size, should be less than half of your height. That works for men, women, and children, young people, old people, across the board. When that belly fat is larger than that, it causes a big issue. That yellow fat pad there is the omentum. Take that away, there's your belly, your liver is up, the brown thing up there, the green is the gallbladder. You just had lunch a couple hours ago, that food is moving through your intestines nicely now. It's probably right about there. As that food mixes with bile, it washes, and as it washes, you absorb those nutrients through the wall of the intestinal tract. Once they're absorbed through the wall of the intestinal tract, your liver will metabolize them to whatever you want. If you're physically active, you divert food, your nutrients away from there, and your liver will take the food, convert it to sugar, and you will burn it off. If you're not physically active, those same nutrients will head to your liver, and your liver will turn into foie gras. 20% of the public has a fatty liver like that whitish liver. And the reason they have that is because their omentum, that yellow pad that I spoke to earlier, is getting ponderously larger, stretching out across your waistline, and that's why I'm measuring belly fat. That's why that's so important. Now, if you look at the big issue here, it comes down, in my opinion, for longevity to one big topic. How much muscle you have versus how much fat you have. Muscle burns at least 3 times more calories than fat. And muscle burns calories even when you're not using it, which means if you're exercising on a treadmill, when you get off the treadmill, you stop burning calories. One tip on treadmills, by the way, the way you exercise is you walk on a treadmill, whatever pace you're comfortable with, and then increase the incline. That's how you increase the effort level. Don't try to run faster. That's why people get hurt. That's why those Tarahumara Indians can run tens and dozens of miles a day and never get injured, even in the 80s and 90s. But the issue for us is weightlifting, lifting your body, yoga, tai chi, those basic exercises. They don't just burn calories while you're doing them. They burn more calories after you've done them, because that muscle is a metabolic furnace. So this is my last slide, and this is your goal. You want to be as hard, as strong, as forceful as you can, because you're out there chasing your prey, like that cheetah is. You see that prey as it goes, the muscle, the lack of fat, and you can do this at any age of your life. It takes some effort, but you can do it. It can work. Thank you very much.